You'll have the properties, yes, and resources and platforms. That's it. So let me highlight them here. You'll have these that will be in your project. Now, when you start the .NET app, you most likely will also get an app share. So the app share is what provides for bottom tab navigation or the burger menu, the fly up menu navigation. In this one, I'm not using it. I wanted to develop a single page, so I removed the app share. The difference that you will see already is if you have the app share here, it would say main page, new app share. That's how then you get the, let's say, the container that will have the bottom tabs and things like that on the mobile app. But for me, I removed, I deleted the app share completely, and I just created a navigatable page that I can navigate from, and I'm using my own page. We'll get to that in a second. Let's go through what they offer before we go through what I added in. So, first things first, the app.xamarin, that's like kind of your starter XAML page. That's where it's going to load first. And it's going to run the code behind and initialize it. That's why when I put my page here, that's the first page that's going to open. That's the home page. If you look at the XAML itself, you will notice that you don't have any interface in here. All you have are colors, styles, other colors, and things like that. This is, think of it, this is like your global style sheet. So anything you create in here, you add in here, are styles that you'll be able to use. We are familiar with web development, right? All of us. So it's like you're adding classes to your CSS. So anything you add in here, it's like you're creating a class. And then you can, at any point, anywhere in your project, just use that class with something. You will see places I have used it. That's the, let's say, first two. Then we'll go to the resources and platforms. So for the resources, if I open it, you'll notice that in here I have other style sheets. So again, it's being imported in my XAML so that it's available throughout the project. But then if I open that style sheet, it's just more definitions of style. So whenever I want to use this particular color, I just put the color as primary. That goes very well if you want to have theming in your app, dark mode, night mode. So you always have primary. What your code does is if you are on light mode, it's going to load a different style sheet, this. And if it's on dark mode, it's going to load another style sheet, and automatically you get like dark mode, light mode. That's the gist of it. And even here, you see, in the same style sheet, you'll notice that it's even referencing itself. See, this is how you use it. So it's right now referencing the same color as the one on top. These are default style sheets that they give you. You could delete this and create your own. I am using the term style sheet a lot. I will correct something here. One thing that is different is these are one property. So a style sheet, usually you could have margin, padding, and some, all of those in one single class. But here it's one single color property. So it's not really a style sheet. As the name suggests, it's just a dictionary. You're saying this term means this color. That's it. You can't say this term means this color and this margin and this padding. No, it's one-to-one mapping. That's the resource dictionary. So now I'm correcting myself, moving away from style sheet. The reason why, this is what a true style sheet look like. Here, you will see that if I go to a component and I say your style should be border, it's going to apply this color of stroke, this thickness of stroke. This is more like the actual CSS. You could have margin in there, you could have padding in there, and everything. So this looks more like a style. And I use this quite heavily in my project, so you get used to it as you see it. I actually am not using almost anything from this page. I created my own style sheets on the side, but I kept it in for the presentation just to show you what it looks like as default. I'm not going to go through every folder, but essentially you have fonts in there. So I'm using Ubuntu font. I like it. And I have you have app icons in there, you have images in there, and different things. So all of those are resources. They are essentially your assets. Those are, I think even in web, you put them before the whole assets. I'm not which framework we're using. But these are all your external resources, let's call them, images and things like that. Now, platform. Here you get all the platforms that can be targeted. I might not be targeting all of them, but they can be targeted. So here you have the Android one, and you have the resources here. Remember how I told you at the beginning that with Xamarin Forms we have one image, and then you have to make versions of it for Android, and then versions of it for iOS based on the scaling and things like that. Here you don't need to do that. When you put it in the resources, there is a logic behind, and it's in Xamarin as well. You can actually take over it, but too deep for today. There is a logic behind that is going to do that for you. So all you have to do to make your forms work is put it in this folder and register it, which we'll get to in a sec. All you have to do for your images, again, same thing. Put it in this folder and make sure that it is registered in that logic that you have that image. It's going to generate everything for you. So you only have to put in, one image. You don't need to put in different versions of the image. But if for whatever reason you feel like you need to do it, you want to do it, you still have the Android-based project here where you have the resources folder and you could add anything you want. You still have the main activity from Android if you want to take over something natively in Android. Okay, that's kind of the project structure. For me, I'm trying to be a bit of a pure-blood .NET with this project, so I did not use anything native, but I did not go into the Android projects or iOS projects. I stuck to .NET MAUI. So far, we went through quite a bit, but any questions? Anything that seems confusing? No? That's great. And I'm doing a good job, or I've lost everyone. Okay, so the way I start this is, if I go back to the slide, this one. I don't have any more slides than this. So this one. I took this image and I started looking at what properties would I need. I want to build a model. There needs to be a data model behind. So there needs to be something telling me what properties, what data you need to show. I don't want to hard code on my widget. So what I did is I was thinking about what data do I need in my widget. And there I started with my model. So my model, I have a widget model. I thought I'm going to have an icon. Maybe, if I can put it side by side a bit. The icon, it's not in the diagram, but normally just before the running, for example, I want a small icon just on the left there. So I thought I'm going to have an icon, a title, running, that's my title. A description maybe, if I want a description, it's not going to show up on the widget, but maybe later on when I code it, I want to open the widget and have more details, and I have a description. Targets. So the targets are how much do I want to do this thing weekly and daily. So I created another class for the target one, and we'll just keep it for now. And here it just has a counter for weekly and daily. So how many times do I want to run on a weekly basis, and how many times do I want to run on a daily basis? It might sound confusing. Why would you have both? Because if daily is 1, that means weekly will be 7. It sounds weird, but actually they work together. I want to run 3 times a day, and on those 3 days, I want to run once. So you see how it goes? So the weekly is the target, 3 times. I'm going to take the example of water. I want to drink water twice a day, and I want to do that 5 days a week. For 2 days, I'm not going to drink water. I don't know why we do that. Okay, so I want to drink water 5 days a week, and every day, every one of those days, I want to drink it twice. That's how it goes. So it might be confusing when you see a weekly target and a daily target because they seem contradictory, but that's not the case. The weekly is the main, the daily just says on each of those days of the weekly, how many times do I want to do it. I thought a lot about fitness. And then I have a created date. The reason for the created date is, if you look again at all of that is coming just from this doodle. It's great. So if you look at this, you will notice there is a left and right arrow at January 1st to January 7th there. I do want to be able to navigate to the past, but I don't want to be, too strict about it. I don't want to have this regime of every day I have to fill this app in before midnight, otherwise tomorrow I can't fill it in. I don't want that kind of stress in my life. I want to be able to do my full week, and then maybe I forgot, I'll go back to the week before at some point next week and just correct the things that I actually did. So I want to be able to do that in this manner. So that's why the created date becomes important. as from when should this widget appear? That's kind of the question. So that's why I have created the just metadata. I'm not sure how I'm going to use it yet. That's the thought I have in my mind, so I put it in there. All right, that's my model. So far, I think we're all on track. It's nothing new. We've seen models before. So then my next step is, and this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Well, for those who have never done it before, there is this thing called MVVM. MVVM stands for Model View Model. There is something else called MVC that maybe you have heard. Model View Controller. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. You know all of the technologies at this point. So it's a pattern, MVVM. It essentially enforces decoupling your UI from your logic. What I mean by this is, whenever I hit one of those tiny circles in there to indicate that I have done this, the interaction is happening on the UI. I want to send this trigger of, hey, I hit that button, over to another C# file, where it's going to trigger that logic that says, what should the app do now that you have triggered this? Now, something, again, depends on your familiarity. You might say, but hey, look at the app XAML. It's a XAML page, so it's a UI page. It has a C# file with it. Why not use that? You could use that, yes. The problem then becomes, applications are not always that simple. Sometimes you are on one page, you are doing some interactions. Sometimes you are on another page, and whatever you do there will affect whatever you were doing on the previous page, right? You can have those cross interactions. Example, you are on your Facebook page. Let's assume Facebook was, it's not really too optimized and too well done in my opinion, but let's assume Facebook was a really, really bad product that has bad design. I'm not sure if it's an assumption. So you have your UI, and now what happens is you are on your home page, you see the posts, right? You click on the image, so now you went to another page, or you clicked on the person's name, so now you went to another page. That's the person's profile page. You like the image there. And again, assume that Facebook does not connect to any servers or anything, it's all local, it's running on your phone, that's it. So you like the page there. It needs to be able to update something somewhere so that when you go back to the home page, it's also like there. See, so the change has to cascade throughout the application in certain cases. So that's the problem that you face. If every UI you had a code just right behind it, it's not going to be easily able to interact with all the other pages you have. So when I like something on the detail page, on the profile page, I'm going to have to find a way so that the profile page code is able to somehow get into this one. That's really bad design. Now you're just trying to connect everything, cross-connect everything to each other, and it becomes a mess. Trust me, I tried. That's how we started to the Xamarin. We're still in beta phase, I think, back then. So yeah, then how do you do it? So the idea is you have your UI, you have your other UI, your code, the one that actually does a process, you keep it completely separate. And both of them just talk to that one code. So anything that you do on that page will change the code, will change the behavior of the code. Let's say you have a list there or a checklist there, something, it's going to change that. When you go back to your first page, it's still connected to the same code, so it will have the same data. Yeah. So that's the basis of MVVM. And M stands for model. What model of data are you using? V stands for view, and VM stands for view model. So the view is the UI, the M is the model, what data are you interacting with, the view model is that code behind, that logic that is completely decoupled. That's one of the, for me that's the primary code for why we would use that. A secondary, more business, let's say related code, is it's a nice decoupling between your code. So one person can work on the UI and the other can immediately at the same time work on the logic. And they don't have to worry about each other. We know how well front-end and back-end developers get along sometimes. Great friends. So, so now I have my views, great. And so now I have my models. So now I want to create my view model. So I want to create the logic that is going to interact with my model, with my data, which is where I created a default view model. Ignore the base for now. It's still my code. It's a base view model. I'll get to that in a sec. And we'll understand this code better when we have the UI as well. So here I have my default view model. You'll see I have a collection of widgets. I also have a list of dates. That's because I have to take the date of today and break it up into 7 days from the last Monday to the next Sunday, so that I can get this pretty thing there, this date layout. So that's why I have to take the date of today and break it up. I have my constructor, so the moment I decide to connect my UI to this view model, it's going to run the constructor, and I wanted to load my first set of data. And these are just let's say public accesses for the same observable collection of widgets. All right. And the load data logic, as you can see there, it's initializing my widget. We'll look at this in a sec. So it's initializing my widgets that I'm going to load on the UI. And everything that you see below, this is what I meant. It's a weird mathematics. Let me remove the highlight, it makes it hard for you to see. It's weird, the mathematics in there, but if you go through it, essentially what it's doing is, if today is this day, when was the last Monday and when is the next Sunday? And then it breaks it out into 7 days. And that's how I get my nice 7 days on top. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I'm going to be honest. I had a problem, I wrote a code, it's fixing it, it's proof of concept is working. So there might be a better way to do it. I'm not investigated enough, but yeah, this is how I'm doing it right now. Great. So far, so good. Now, if we look at the UI code, it's in my views folder, and I have one single default view. And in the default view, this is how, when you create a new page, you can create one right now, just to show you. New item, and inside of the new item you have .MAUI, and in .MAUI you have content view, content page. There are differences. Or if you want to create like those colors or styles pages, that's the resource dictionary one. So I'm going to go for a content page. I'm going to give it a name. I have a default view. I'm going to have a detail view, let's say. And add. This is what it starts with. It's pretty straightforward. It has a simple thing in there that just says, welcome to .MAUI. Technically, it's probably a bad move to change my code when I don't want to do live coding. But technically, if I come here and I do detail view instead of my page and I run the application, this is my data. It should just show welcome to .MAUI on the page. Questions so far? Did we lose anyone? I would say this is a .MAUI presentation. It's good if you get something for .MAUI out of it, but at the bare minimum, these principles of having your styles separated, your logic separated, those can be applied to almost any project. I did that with React Native. I'm not sure if I can consider myself a pure-blood proper React Native developer, because I essentially took my understanding of project structure from .NET and Xamarin forms and just used it in React Native. It always worked out for me. So at the bare minimum, I would say try to understand the concepts behind why are we splitting things. That's the most important part. And then do try to see a bit about .MAUI. If you want to try it out, you can. While this is loading, I'll talk about that base view model. So remember how I told you, you have your view model. We'll get to the loaded page in a sec. You have your view model that is behind the code. It's connected to your UI. Great. Now, when you change something, if the UI, you are using the code that is tied to it. You are not using the separate view model, you're just using the code tied to it. They are connected. So anything you do on the UI immediately triggers the code behind. They are one. But when you have your code behind separate, you break that connection. Sure, you're going to tell the page, hey, use that code. Great. That's not enough. You need to establish a back and forth connection, a two-way connection, binding. So essentially what you want to do is you want to bind that code to your front end, to your UI, so that whenever you do something, it's able to inform the logic behind that something happened. That's the easy part. But then when something happened there as well, it needs to be able to inform the UI. Two-way binding. Two-way binding, exactly. So essentially what you want to do is, the reason why, it's the same thing. Home page, profile page, same logic behind. You want to be able to, when you did something here on the profile page, trigger the logic there. Great. You want the logic there to tell this page now that something changed so that it can update its own data. So you want it to communicate two-way, UI to the code, code to the UI. And to do that, we use a, I'm not sure if I'm going to call it a pattern. We use this, there is something called I-notify property change that used to exist. I don't know if it's actually known as the property change pattern, but this is the logic we use. We have something that is provided to us within .NET MAUI that easily can, let's say, bootstrap that code, add in the code that's going to do that notification from code to UI. From UI to code, again, that's easy. It's just on the UI, you tell it what it needs to call. That's easy. From code to UI, that's the part that you need to have that property change. Think of it as this way, it's a notification kind of mechanism. So when you did something, the UI, the code, sends a notification to the UI. That's essentially what it does. And we call that a property change notification. The way it works, now, I'm going to want this on every one of my view models because every one of my view models is probably going to be connected to a UI. So that's why what I did is, because I like clean code, so I decided to create a base view model that just, let's say, makes this functionality generic. And any new view model that I create, I just inherit it, it's plugged in. I have that notification mechanism now built in. And the base view model, if you look at it, this is essentially all that you need. Property change, essentially, when you did something, it's going to connect to this property change one, and the function below, the on property change, this is the one that does the trigger. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but essentially it can know what to call it, thanks to this annotation here, colon member name annotation. So this is the code, but you have to use it, right? How do you use it is, let's say I have this, we already know on juice. Let's say I have this it's busy boolean, and I'm changing it in code. I want to trigger that property change. Easy. So what I do is I write the getSet methods, that's basic object-oriented, so getSet methods. In the set method, I put it if I am updating the value. So if the value is already the same, I'm not updating it, I don't need to trigger anything. But if I am updating the value, trigger on property change. That's it. And it's going to work. And you will see I did this with every property that I have inside that default view model as well. So if I look at the default view model, my widgets collection, when I'm retrieving it, again, when the UI is doing something, it's easy. Retrieval, I just return my list of widgets. But when I'm changing it, I need to trigger on property change so that the code informs everybody else who wants to know about it that, hey, this has changed. So far, so good. So we've gone through the view model, we've gone through the property change, we've gone through the project structure, through MPM. We are doing great so far. Looks like everybody is following along. Nobody's lost so far. Question, finally. All right.
Is the logic always client side? I mean, can it be server side, the logic, or is it only?
Yes. Yes. The trigger, the notification though, but your logic behind most of the time will be on the server side. So what happens then is you get a three-layer thing. So you have your UI, connects to the code, still in the same project. That code is going to talk to the server. And when the server responds to it, it notifies the UI.
So you have two logic, one on the client side and one on the server side.
One on the server side.
And you have to create your API?
Yeah, so think of it as you have your API that you develop completely separately, okay. And then you have your UI. When you click a button on the UI, it calls the view model makes an HTTP call to the API, gets a response, and then notifies that something has changed. When it notifies that something has changed, the UI gets it in.
So the MAUI system is only a client-side system. It doesn't manage the server side. Okay.
And that's a really nice segue into services. I did not pay him to make this, to ask these questions. So you will see here in the load data, you will see I call widget service instance.getService. I try to make it like a very bare bones singleton. If I want to be nice, I would have dependency injection, but I did not. This was a quick project. So widget service is what you would use to talk to your server side. For me, I'm separating. I don't like my view model to have everything just coded in. I want my view model to talk to a very clean service whose responsibility is only to talk to the server. So I like to split it as much as I can so that it's clean. So in the widget service, you'll see that I have a get widget. Here I'm just returning a list, but here's where you would do that HTTP code, for example. So here I'm fully local, but we would have that in here. And then whenever your view model is triggered, it's going to call that load data whenever it's created, and that's going to do the fetch. See, at the start, when your view model has loaded on your UI, you don't have anything, it has not fetched yet, so you won't see anything. It's now fetching. That's why I have the isBusy property in my base view model, so that I know I put that as true when it's fetching. So then it's busy and show a small loader. And then when it has come back, now I have data. The code needs to inform the UI that it got data. So it triggers the property change and the code the UI that just fetches it in this case. So that's how everything remains kind of seamless. Alright, so that's the widget service. We've already covered that as well. Great progress. This section here again, just a basic bare bones singleton logic. Not too much to think about. Now if we look at our project, the run, where is it? This one. See, so you have the welcome.net now. I'm gonna use this opportunity to show to you the live reload, the hot reload. If I erase this, and there you go. So no, I'm still debugging, I did not change it. It takes a second, just talks to the emulator, and there you go. So if I put something in there, it gives you a set just in case you're still typing and also to make a connection, but there you go, so it goes in. So this is the hot reload thing, and I learned that they did that. So alright, I'll save this, I'll close it. Now, here is where hot reload might not work, that's also good to know. Here I was modifying the UI. Now if I go to the code behind, and I say, hey, I want you to use my default view instead. This is the kind of change that normally, I save it, this can't be hot reloaded. Because it needs to rerun that code, and that code has already been executed in this instance. So here I have to restart my application. And the great reveal, and I hear that everybody will go, wow. When it goes up, it's not good. Yeah, that's splash screen. I made that too much.
Exception.
Wait.
Exception.
Yeah, I know what this is. I was tweaking with the code there. Default view, no, sorry, it's in the widget. Where's my widget there? One sec, we'll get there. That's why you should not play with your code before your presentation. Where is it? If everybody sees a binding context somewhere, just say, there it is. This is what I want. Good thing I knew about it. It was taking me like long to debug this, right? Alright. Wait for the cue. Wait.
You're just sweating.
That's a drum roll. That's acceptable. If everything goes well, there you go. There is one issue. I'm still working on that. You can see I don't have all of the things built in yet. I do apologize that it's in dark mode. The light does not make it good to see dark mode on this, but I hope you can see it. If I move this, and the dates should appear as well. That's there you go. So sorry, the dates should appear. So that's the design we were going for. If you compare it with the original picture, getting there, almost there. That's the UI, and how can I make that UI easy? So that's the last thing we'll go through, and I don't know what I'm at for time. That's the last thing we go through, and then we can close off. So how did I code that UI? Also easy. So I'm going to try to walk you through how I actually coded it for at this part. So the first thing I did is I have my content page. I want to connect my view models. I want to use some other logic behind. The way you do that, the way you tell your UI that there is code that you need to use, it's not connecting yet. You just want, just like you reference your libraries using blah blah blah. That the exact same thing. How you do that in here is like this. So this is kind of like I'm saying use live.viewModels. The application's name is live. So use live.viewModels. Using live.viewModels. It's the exact same thing. Same for the templates, same for the uploaders. We'll see what they do inside. So that's the first thing I did. I added my usings, my references. The second thing I did is I created this content page.resources, and I created this resource dictionary node, but it was empty. I did not add anything to it at the start. Third thing I did was I connected it to my view model, so now it's connected to my view model. I gave it a binding context, and then I started coding my UI. And here you will see I have a grid. So a grid, essentially you can have rows and column. Otherwise you have a stack UI, stack layout where it stacks one on top of each other. You have horizontal stack layout for stacking next to each other. Here I'm using a grid. I really like using the grids, they are very manual. Gave it a background color. Notice how I'm not using any hard-coded colors. I'm using my dictionary. And maybe you can try it out. Taking a lot of risks. If I go to the app.xamarin and let's say I change this and I say put it as white, which is FFFF, and I save this in my app.xamarin. There you go. Everything went to white. So if I wanted to right now, I could change this to a light theme, but we'll have to talk about the colors. The colors need too much, so I'm not going to do that. But this is what I meant by you have your colors as global, let's say, variables in a way. So in the app.xamarin. But now, same as CSS, you might want some part of the CSS, of the styles, to only be loaded when you are on a certain page, because you don't need them everywhere, right? Obviously, if you use something like Tailwind that minifies, it's going to do that for you. But if you are, let's say, a hardcore coder, you will have to figure out, hey, on this page I need this additional CSS, on this other I don't need it. It's the same principle here. So in my default view, that's why I have a resource dictionary. So I'm defining styles that are relevant only to this page here. In my app.xamarin, I'm defining global styles, right? So let's minimize it for now. So I created my grid. This one did not need too much styling, so I put background color directly. Row definitions, essentially telling it how long, the height of the different rows. 110, and the auto one is essentially take whatever you need. So auto height. The 110 is for that first part here. And then here is where the style comes into play, the local styles. So I have a second grid inside that grid because I want to write this live track your habits thing. By the way, I could have used a stack layout here because it's one on top of the other. If I was being a good coder, you use the right thing for the right thing. So I would have used the stack layout, but in this case, I still went on and used the grid. And you will see that the style here goes static resource container style, and that is here. So my local style. So as I went along, and I knew that I'm going to have to style something, for me, if I'm styling a single property, I put it in the node. If I'm styling more than a single property, I usually put it in its own style, just to keep my code clean. That's my personal preference. And also there is the fact that the container style is something that most likely I will use on other pages as well, so it makes more sense to have it this way. Probably when I have more pages, I will move this out of here into its own styles page and then load it on each of those pages whenever I need. Getting very close to CSS and HTML, how to do things. But yeah, which by the way, it supports CSS. That's it. Alright, yeah, the same thought. By the way, .MAUI supports CSS. You can write your styles in CSS. I'm not going to say 100% support. You can't completely style it in CSS, but you can, let's say, add on to the styling, let's say, mechanism that it has, a good part of it you can actually transfer to CSS instead and just do this cascade installation. Alright. I have my grid, I have my labels still using the styles. So you guys are pretty familiar with that now. So let's go to something else. How am I fetching data from my code behind? So to fetch data from my code behind, I already defined the binding context here. I already told it that this page is using this binding context. So if I scroll down, this is a collection view. A collection view is essentially what I want to use if I have, let's say, a list of items in my business logic code behind the view model. I want the collection view to load something for everything in the list. So I want the collection view to load a UI element for every item in the list. Just look at the widgets. I'm not going to write code for every single widget. I write one code, and for every widget, just use the same code and generate, right? Not a new concept. So the way you do this is, because you already said that the binding context is the default view model, you just need to tell it what property in there do I need to bind to, which is here, binding current read. And if I look at my default view model, we should have current read, which is essentially just returning a list of dates. That's the dates at the top. All right. Is it correct, by the way, the dates? Yeah. Ah, yeah, it's the 14th. It's Saturday. See, the code works. All right. So my laptop is getting slow. That's a warning that it's about to go off, but I think we are at the end. So this is essentially how you start with the .NET project, how the MVM overall works. I have written blog posts in the past about it. My blog is now down, so I'm going to take the same post. The funny thing is, I wrote this post in 2014 or something. It still is relevant today with .NET MAUI with the same kind of logic. So yeah, what you said about blog posts being forever, that's true. So I'm trying to revive my blog, let's say, and I'm going to put it there. But the post definitely will be on my GitHub. I'll share the link in a sec. I'll stop the debugging just to not overload my laptop right now. This is the only page I have. Yeah, so we went through MVM, we went through the Xamarin, the dictionaries, we went through the how the binding happens, and I believe code-wise that was everything I wanted to show you, to introduce it to you. And let's see anything else. This was a diagram. Oh, you guys are lagging a bit. There you go. This was the diagram. After the diagram, we have the skip to the codes, and after the codes. That signifies the end. So, usually at the start of a presentation, if there are strangers, they don't really care who you are. But I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation and got something out of it. And my name is Vidush Namah, and I will make sure that these slides and the codes are on GitHub. My GitHub is github.com/vnsnippets. And that's it. Thank you. Questions, by the way?
Yeah, it's just a funny question. You are referring to Ubuntu font?
Yeah.
You look like on Windows. Have you changed your mind, please?
I actually really like the Ubuntu font. I don't know why it's, but yeah. I use it in, I think, every mobile app when I do a POC. I always just go for Ubuntu font.
Okay. But you stick to Windows?
Yeah, not really. Like I was saying at the start, I have a Windows machine, but I also have a Mac OS system, so a Mac Mini, because if I want to debug an iPhone for Xamarin and .NET MAUI, you need to connect to a Mac device. And I also used to use Linux on this one. I don't have the virtual boot yet. So yeah, I'm a bit all over the place with technology. That's where I came up with the technology is not bad. You just need to know where to use them, how to use them. By the way, Xamarin did really well for enterprise applications. A lot of enterprise. So a lot of people, dissed on Xamarin, like, hey, it's not good or anything like that. But they never investigated all the use cases. Enterprise applications were great with Xamarin. But now let's say if you want something really quick to build a POC with, and you want to use technologies you know, React Native is a great alternative there. Probably I would not tell you to go learn Xamarin if you want to build a POC and you already know React. Go for React Native. So different technologies, different use cases, except Ubuntu is the best one I can use so far.
So,
that's not quite okay because Xamarin or MAUI, also Blazor, is a situation that you actually stay in your technology stack.
Exactly.
If you say, oh yeah, you can go and, for example, go for Flutter, go for React Native or whatever, you have a problem because then you're going into a different programming language
And learning
where you have no expertise.
Yeah, but that's the
If
thing.
you are a .NET developer, you are familiar with C#, you are familiar with XAML based on Windows Presentation Foundation or WinUI.
Yeah, it's actually really.
And then you can actually transfer this knowledge from WPF
Yeah.
WinForms into MAUI. And you don't need to go into JavaScript.
It's the same principle but on the other way around. So if you're familiar with React, you'll be good with React Native, but if you already know .NET development, if you know MVC, you are used to ASP.NET or anything like that, it's extremely easy to shift to Xamarin. The principles are the same, the language is slightly different, but the concept behind is the same, so yeah, it's an easy move. That's how I started. I started with MVC, ASP.NET. When Xamarin came out, we quite easily shifted over. And MVVM was easy to understand because MVC already exists in .NET, so it's not that far off. Yeah.
But if you want to use native control from
You
iPhone, you can.
You can.
You don't need to use web-based. You can fill.
So what happens is, remember I showed I'm not going to open it because my laptop is starting to lag, but remember I showed the platforms folder with Android and iOS. In there, you can write code and you inherit from something called the renderer, I believe. So essentially what you are doing is you are writing a custom renderer to say that when I use this component, give it a name. If I'm using XYZ node in my XAML, so you don't have to rewrite the UI, you still use the shared UI, the XAML one. You write XYZ as a component there, but you want it to behave differently on iOS and use something native to iOS. So there you write a custom renderer to tell it whenever there is the node XYZ, use this on iOS, and then it goes completely native.
But is
I've
it really
done that.
native control? I mean,
It's
like
you don't write
native
the-
iOS slider and
It
so-
is.
It
So,
is.
so the renderer exposes, you write it in C#, so there is a translation that happens behind, but that's behind the scenes. But that's what it does, it's taking your C# code and then transferring it, turning it into the native component. There it is. So the best way I can, let's say, back this up is when you go for a custom renderer, for iOS, when you are creating a component, there are certain methods that they give you. You know, like maybe, I don't know by heart, but let's say maybe on appearing, on disappearing, you know, something like that. On Android, you get other things. They have, what do they call it? Intents, I think, things like that. They have intents. So there they have other things. So whenever you inherit that renderer, it gives you the methods that normally an Android component would have. You can even access the things like manifest and things like that, just like you would do on an Android project. Now, is it 100% foolproof for every use case? I can't tell you. All the use cases I have had so far, and I've done some pretty crazy custom rendering, it has worked out. Because I never always liked how things became by default, so I did a lot of custom rendering with Xamarin Forms. That same thing has been ported over with .NET MAUI and made better. So that's what I was saying at the start. It's closer to native components now, so it's even better compared to Xamarin Forms. Xamarin Forms was not purely native component. It's like there was a layer on top. With MAUI, from what I've seen till now, it's purely native component.
So it's really an independent app. It's not a browser rendering. It's fully independent. And
Yeah. So the shared code is just that. It's shared code, but at the end it gets converted into the iOS app or the Android app or the Windows app.
Can you use the same UI write code for open app, so on the browser?
For Blazor, yes. So I don't know if you're familiar with Blazor. So Microsoft released it. Was that last year? 2 years, I think it's been Blazor. But they released Blazor, which is essentially writing progressive web apps with .NET and with Razor HTML. So if I'm, and I will fact check that and get back to you, but if my memory serves, there is support for the code base to be shared cross-platform mobile and Blazor, so which comes to the website, but I believe it's still under work. So you can use it. In fact, if you try to create a new project, you have .NET MAUI Blazor app. That exists already. So it's already an offering that you can create a new project that way. But I don't know how far they have gone, whether it supports everything that it can support on mobile. That's the part that I would fact check.
Is Blazor?
Might look into .NET Standard 2.1.
For .NET, it's using .NET Standard 2.1, I believe, already.
Yeah, because they have a defined set that is available across platforms.
So
for
the
example,
Blazor
if you
thing.
target .NET Standard 2.0, you are not getting all features from .NET 5.6 or C# language features, because .NET Standard 2.0 is still compatible with .NET Framework 4.8. So if you want to have like components written or assemblies written that are working on Framework and on .NET, you would go for .NET Standard. And in a similar fashion, if you want to say, okay, you want to have .NET 6, Blazor, MAUI, you might actually look into .NET Standard 2.1. Because this is completely .NET. .NET Framework is disconnected, but it allows them that you can have the different target platforms.
Finally, so there you go. So this is the 2.1, and here it explains to you what does it support. And here you see kind of different. So if you look at 2.0, I believe.
Exactly. You get support, for